Ever notice how the loudest voices in the room often shrink when it's time to show receipts? That's exactly what happened when Angel Reese, the self-proclaimed reason people watch women's basketball, was confronted with a simple, honest question: where's the proof? A Chicago Sky reporter recently asked Reese to explain her viral claim from last season, that fans tune in because of her, and her now infamous two-word response. Let's just say it wasn't exactly a mic drop. It was more of a question mark. Social media went wild, not because she silenced the haters, but because she had no real answer at all. But while that moment was awkward enough to earn a permanent spot in the Overconfident Athlete Hall of Fame, the real story goes even deeper. Is Angel Reese truly the engine driving interest in women's basketball? Or is she just catching the wind generated by Caitlin Clark's historic rise? Because if we take a step back and actually look at the numbers, TV ratings, arena sellouts, merchandise sales, viewership spikes, and social media buzz, it becomes overwhelmingly clear who's setting the pace. Caitlin Clark has broken attendance records, drawn record-breaking TV audiences, and ignited nationwide conversations about women's sports. Her college games pulled in millions, and her WNBA debut? A sellout. Every arena she steps into becomes the hottest ticket in town. Compare that to Reese's numbers, and it's not even close. The difference isn't just measurable, it's monumental. Reese might bring drama, but Clark brings demand. This isn't just about two athletes. It's about the clash between hype and hard-earned legacy. Reese talks like she's the headline, but Clark is the one actually making history. And let's be honest, confidence is great. Swagger sells. But when your bold statements aren't backed up by results, they start to sound more like fiction than fact. So as fans continue to choose sides, the lines have been drawn. Are you backing the stats, the skill, and the legacy of someone redefining the sport? Or are you still riding with someone whose biggest moment this season was a viral press conference silence? If you're Team Caitlin, drop a baby goat in the comments. And if you're Team Reese, well, maybe it's time to bring more than just the talk. Because in the world of sports, receipts always speak louder than rhetoric. Let's break it all down.
My mom kicked me out of my house, to tell the truth.
For the first time in his life, Jimmy Butler finally had a place to call home. Not just a roof over his head, but a real family. A family that didn't see him as a troubled kid or a future athlete. They saw him as a human being, a son. They accepted me into their family. And it wasn't because of basketball. Jimmy recalled years later, Michelle Lambert, the woman who took him in, wasn't a recruiter, a coach, or a scout. She was simply kind, genuinely kind. She just did stuff like that. I couldn't believe it. That belief, belonging, was something Jimmy had never known, and with that came structure. For the first time, he had rules to follow, responsibilities to uphold. Even a curfew. Slowly, the chaos of his past began to settle. His grades started climbing. He stayed off the streets. Trouble wasn't chasing him anymore because he wasn't chasing it either. But if you're expecting a fairy tale moment where Jimmy suddenly turns into a basketball prodigy, that's not what happened. In fact, basketball wasn't even the focus. He didn't dream of the NBA. He didn't play in elite camps. He didn't join the AAU circuit. He just played for fun. Backyard games, pickup runs, no hype, no scouts, no headlines. Still, something inside him was different. Even without the spotlight, Jimmy played with fire. Not for fame, but for pride. By his senior year of high school, that fire earned him the role of team captain. He averaged 20 points and 9 rebounds and made the all-district first team. But to college scouts, Jimmy Butler wasn't even a blip on the radar. When he graduated, he wasn't ranked 73rd in the country. He was ranked 73rd in the state of Texas, not exactly a golden ticket to the NCAA. The top universities never came knocking. Instead, a single offer arrived from Tyler Junior College, a 2-year community school most players only attend when every other door is shut. For many, the JUCO route is the end of the dream, but not for Jimmy, because when his back is against the wall, Jimmy doesn't crack, he climbs. In his very first game at Tyler, he dropped 34 points. That wasn't a fluke. He went on to post multiple 30 and 40-point games throughout the season, eventually becoming the team's leading scorer with 18 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. Finally, people started paying attention. His breakout season got the attention of Division I programs. But when Jimmy chose Marquette, it wasn't for basketball. He picked the school because of its academics, because he still thought basketball would never be his career. His plan was to get an education, find a job, and live a normal life. Casual was his approach. He faxed his letter of intent to Marquette from a McDonald's. And when he finally got there, it didn't exactly feel like destiny. He barely played. He averaged just 5 points a game. He missed his family, and his coach, Buzz Williams, didn't sugarcoat anything. The very first thing he said to me after watching me play was, "Jimmy, you suck." Jimmy didn't even know how to respond. "I don't even know you," he remembered thinking. Like, who talks to a kid like that? But what felt like harshness was actually tough love. Coach Williams saw what Jimmy couldn't see in himself. "I've never been harder on a player than I've been on Jimmy," he admitted. "He didn't know how good he could be. I was ruthless with him because I believed in him more than he did." You see, Jimmy had been told his whole life that he wasn't enough, not smart enough, not good enough, not worthy enough. But suddenly, someone saw a different story in him, a different ending, and then came the spark. His teammate, Wesley Matthews, got drafted into the NBA. A guy Jimmy practiced with, trained beside, laughed and bled with, he was making it. And Wes turned to Jimmy and said, "You can make it too. You've got the talent." That one sentence changed everything. It wasn't just encouragement, it was permission. Permission to dream, permission to fight for more. And just like that, the switch flipped. Jimmy Butler, once homeless, overlooked, and underranked, began to rewrite the narrative, not just of his own life, but of what it truly means to be a fighter.
Just one more night. It just kind of developed into a week and then a month.
He quickly transformed into the most relentless worker Coach Williams had ever encountered. A player who didn't just show up early and stay late, but lived and breathed the grind every single day. What started as a quiet, overlooked role on the bench soon evolved into something extraordinary. Through sheer grit, discipline, and a mindset that refused to settle for average, he clawed his way up the ranks. Day by day, rep by rep, he reshaped his game, sharpened his skills, and elevated not only his own performance, but the entire team's energy. His transition from a background role to the team's centerpiece wasn't just about scoring more points or logging more minutes. It was about leadership. Teammates started looking to him in high-pressure moments. Coaches began designing plays around his strengths. Fans learned his name, not for one big highlight, but for the consistent excellence he brought every night. From barely making the lineup to becoming the emotional and physical engine of the squad, his rise was a masterclass in how relentless effort and laser focus can turn
people
an
say
underdog
you just
into a
pick
star.
a child you don't even know. He's brought more to us than ever we could bring to him.
That's them. That's family. That's what that is. That's your blood. Well, I feel like family is who you love.
Jimmy Butler's fiery temperament, once seen as his biggest flaw, quietly transformed into the very engine that drove his rise. What many mistook for arrogance was actually unfiltered passion. Instead of shutting down in the face of criticism, Jimmy leaned into it. He didn't let his ego get in the way. Instead, he dissected every critique with the mind of a tactician, breaking down his mistakes, searching for the lesson, and emerging sharper every time. By his senior year at Marquette, he was averaging 15 points and 6 rebounds, numbers that don't exactly jump off the page. But to judge Jimmy by box scores alone would be like trying to measure heart with a stopwatch. He was the glue guy, the grinder, the relentless defender, the vocal leader, the kind of player who didn't need the spotlight to control the game. Marquette had no true scoring phenoms, no big-name stars, just a group of guys trying to survive the chaos of college hoops. And at the center of it all was Jimmy, willing them forward with sheer grit. Game after game, he imposed his will, crashing the boards, locking down scorers, diving for loose balls like the floor was made of gold. He pushed that underdog squad all the way to the Sweet 16, not because he was the most talented, but because he refused to lose. Jimmy Butler wasn't just building a college resume. He was laying the foundation for a career that would be defined by heart, hustle, and hunger. He turned his flaws into fuel, his fire into focus. And long before he became a 6-time NBA All-Star, he was already proving that greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the guy who never stops fighting.
I've never been harder on a player than I've been on Jimmy. I was ruthless with him because he didn't know how good he could be. He'd been told his whole life he wasn't good enough. What I was seeing was a guy who could impact our team in so many ways. Buzz Williams.
When Jimmy Butler declared for the 2011 NBA Draft, he wasn't your typical top-tier prospect with flashy highlight reels or viral mixtapes. But what he lacked in hype, he more than made up for in heart. From the moment he stepped into pre-draft, interviews and workouts, he turned heads, not just with his gritty, relentless style of play, but with his maturity, discipline, and compelling personal story. Nearly every general manager who met him walked away saying the same thing. Jimmy Butler was one of the most impressive young men they'd ever interviewed. His character was off the charts, his work ethic was undeniable, and his hunger to prove himself burned through every drill and every conversation. But even with all those intangibles, Jimmy was still considered a gamble. Scouts were quick to point out his flaws. He lacked a reliable outside shot, his ball handling was just average, and he didn't have the explosiveness that teams typically look for in a wing player. He was the definition of a diamond in the rough. Raw, unpolished, but full of potential for anyone willing to be patient. Because of that, he slipped through the cracks on draft night, passed over again and again as teams chase flashier picks. Finally, with the 30th and final pick of the first round, the Chicago Bulls took a chance on him. It wasn't a pick that made headlines, but what the Bulls saw and what most teams overlooked was a player who didn't need attention to thrive. Jimmy wasn't just chasing a contract or a career, he was chasing greatness. He came into the league quietly, with no fanfare, but with a chip on his shoulder and a fire in his gut. And over the years, that overlooked 30th pick would grow into one of the fiercest competitors, most respected leaders, and biggest success stories in the NBA. A true testament to what happens when grit meets opportunity.
Wesley Matthews came back and was like, yo, you can play in the league. That's when I really started to take basketball for real, for real. Level, not Europe pro, nothing's wrong with that. Yeah. But like the NBA, like that's where you want to be at. That's the best of the best.